Welcome back to another great session, episode here of Growth Through Positivity. We're excited to have Mike on. Mike, tell us who you are, first and last name, and what is it that you do?
Sure. And, first, thanks, Ellie, for having me on there. I'm really excited I love your project. This is really great. So I'm Mike Walrod. I work for a company called GCE Strategic Consulting, and we provide fractional integrators for companies that are running EOS. So Entrepreneurial Operating System. So not only that, I guess, for folks who don't know EOS, it's an operating system for small businesses. Think of a fractional integrator as a COO, kind of the second in command. And so what we do is we help companies that are looking for an interim or fractional second in command to help improve their operations, processes, things like that.
I love the way you explained what EOS is and how we interact together. So I'm going to just pile on to that very briefly. As an EOS implementer, I get into the room with leadership people or sometimes just the owners, and we recognize that they have all the skill set in their trade and they're growing their business. They may be the best salesperson or the best in finance, and they're really looking to bring in a COO. Not everybody could bring on a full-time and make that upfront investment. There's the fractional option, and that's where Mike comes in. So, Mike, again, just to clarify to our audience and to everybody on LinkedIn, do you only work with companies that are already implementing EOS, or do you work with everybody?
We try, that's a great question. Most of the people that we talk to have already implemented EOS to some extent. Whether they're, 6 months into their journey or 2 years into the journey, we work with a lot of them. But we also work with folks who aren't using EOS at all. They're entertaining it, but they're just not sure yet. And they still have that need for some operational help to work with processes and things like that. And so, frankly, we just love working for smaller companies who are looking to grow and looking to need some help and are reaching out, and we match with their need with our skill set.
Yeah, I want you to elaborate a little bit at maybe the geographic first aspect of it. Who are your ideal clients?
So interestingly, we are totally virtual. So we work with clients all across. When I first started working for GCE, I thought most of our clients were going to be in the United States. And interestingly, over the last couple of months, I've had conversations with people all over the world who are looking for help with fractional integrators. And surprisingly to me, that the US has most of the fractional integrators available across the world. I had no idea. So it's not common for someone from like Australia or Singapore or places like that to have access to fractional integrators, especially virtual, which is what we do. Our typical client is anywhere employees that have, or companies that have anywhere from 10 to 200 employees. Smaller, revenue size is not a big deal. Industry, we're fairly industry agnostic. I think, we want to work with folks who are interested in growth and interested in making change and interested in doing some of the things that need to be done in order to take the next step in their journey.
Yes, and I want to just stress on one thing here that you mentioned that in unique to your company and what you do, and I think people should recognize it. And when they're listening to this podcast, they should tap in to see if their services, if their products can be shared with the world, and not always is it limited to your geographic. Maybe you're very, very popular in a certain geographic factor, but be open to go down avenues that can broaden that. Go through Zoom, interact, go to national trade shows versus local trade shows. So I think that's very, very interesting and unique. And then obviously find your sweet spot and stick to it. And, run down that road that brings you success over and over and over. I know you mentioned that like revenue and industry is not the specifics, but maybe share with us a type of industry that you've seen great success, or just in general, a success story that you had.
So that's a great question, because it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody has things that they move towards or have an affinity towards. And for me, my history has been in service businesses. So whether it's B2B, B2C, it's all some type of service offering. So I tend to gravitate towards companies who are offering some type of service, whether it's professional or consumer or anything like that. I'm comfortable in those types of scenarios. But I've had, fun and success in, distribution companies, manufacturing companies, so that's the cool thing about operations for the most part, is that the skills and the processes can transition to almost any type of industry. It's kind of a neat thing.
Take us back a little bit in your career that landed you this position and with this company. How did that come about, and how long have you been with them?
So I was with a financial services company for over 20 years in operations. I've been in operations my whole life. And they were in a kind of a growth mode when I started. They grew a lot and learned a ton. But once you reach that 20-year mark, a lot of times in organizations, you kind of got that been there, done that thing going on. And so that's kind of what happened with me. And I thought, well, what's next in my career? And, throughout my career, even in operations, even when we left that company, I've always been interested in growth, moving forward, whether it's with people or with companies or things like that. And so I knew when I left, I wanted to continue to help small businesses and people who run small businesses. And so I started doing some consulting, and a lot of it was around strategic planning, operations, things like that, and kind of one-off or, small engagements. And those were fun. But then I started getting into some of the more kind of fractional, probably 5 or 6 years ago, fractional executive positions started becoming a bigger deal. And so I had some fractional COO, fractional CEO engagements. And I really liked kind of the a little bit longer, a little bit deeper engagement where you can really get in and make a lot of changes. That to me was, really, really exciting. And probably a couple of years ago, I ran into an engagement that they were running EOS, which is my first exposure to an EOS company. I've known about Traction. I've read it a couple of times and really kind of thought it was a fascinating program, but I'd never seen it. And so this organization that I had an engagement with, I was the fractional integrator, and it was amazing. It was amazing the amount of structure it provided, the clarity it provided, and accountability. I mean, it kind of ticked all of the boxes. And so I did that I did that engagement. I continued to do some fractional operation engagements, and then last year I had another fractional integrator engagement, but I was kind of bouncing around a little bit, and I was all on my own. So it was kind of the solopreneur kind of a deal, which was fun. I enjoyed the flexibility of that. But towards the end of last year, I kind of got to the mindset that, I really want to focus on EOS. And I really want to be able to offer clients kind of this full spectrum of help, not just being a fractional integrator, but, what's beyond that. And I kind of realized that that's probably not something I can offer just on my own. I feel like I'm a fairly talented person, but I don't have the deepest bench being one person. And so I started looking for organizations that I could, collaborate with or join and just to see what was out there. And towards the end of last year, I ran into GCE and started talking with them. And it really kind of was I don't know if you would say love at first sight, but it was kind of they're a neat organization. I really liked what they had to offer, and, we continued to talk and ended up joining them in January. And why I joined and what they had to offer was they have, the principal has been a fractional integrator for 8 years. And so he's kind of one of the original fractional integrators in the industry. And so he has this amazing depth of knowledge. And then there's another fractional integrator that has almost 8 years of experience. And so to have the ability to tap into a couple mentors in EOS that have that much experience, I mean, it's hard to find that. But the other thing that they provide, which I think is kind of cool, is, and this is just through experience and learning, is that when they would go into a client and if they had an engagement, almost all the time, it wasn't just a need for a fractional integrator. There was something else that always happened there was a need somewhere else. So whether it was human resources or marketing or sales or recruiting. I mean, there was just another thing that needed addressed. And that's, I think, typical in all small businesses. It's not just one thing that you need help on. It's usually a variety of things. And if you don't have a good fractional integrator, sometimes you can only knock those things off one at a time. But if you have a fractional integrator, you might be able to work on a couple of things at the same time. And so what GCE brings to the table is they have a bench of executives that are fractional HR, fractional sales, fractional marketing, recruiting. We even have a person who can look at compensation plans. And, for me, being able to tap into that market and go to a client and say, hey, not only can we provide you a really quality engagement with a fractional integrator, we can also help you and take a look at some of these other things that might be going on in your business. And so I thought, being able to offer a comprehensive plan for a small business who might not have access to those things, I really thought that was a neat thing.
Excellent. I know we touched on so many great points, so we're going to have you back at another time due to the fact that this is such a short interview.
Sure.
But I want to share with the audience how to get in touch with you and GSE in regards to not just the fractional integrator. And for those that are listening, the integrator is the COO position in a typical company.
Yep.
They offer all different seats on a function factor from, like you said, HR and other areas. So elaborate of how people can get in touch with you.
So probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me is I'm on LinkedIn, Mike Walrod, fairly unique last name. So I'm pretty easy to find. Send me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to, talk to anybody out there who's interested in learning about GCE or about Fractional Integrator. Always love those conversations. You can also send me an email. And my email address is mike@GCEstrategicconsulting.com. And there's 2 C's in the middle of that, which sometimes I even get confused on.
Okay, very good. So here we are. We're going to wrap it up. We have 2 rapid fire questions.
Great.
And we appreciate everybody for joining and watching. Reach out to Mike. Mike reached out to me. That's how we built a relationship. And we're here to offer the wisdom and the golden nuggets out to the world. Just tap into it. Michael shared so many great pointers in such great detail. Number 1 book that you have read, and is there a different book that you would recommend to the audience to read?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I think
the first one that comes to mind.
Since we're talking about EOS, I think if you're a small business owner or even a leader in a small business, I think Traction is a great book. I read it multiple times. I couldn't recommend it more. There's just so many good books out there.
And this is not staged. I didn't ask Mike as an implementer to say Traction, so I'm happy that Traction was one of your choice. Just with the audience, Traction was my very first book that I read in my life at 37 as a dyslexic adult.
Wow.
So cool. We could talk about that on a different podcast. Second question. Have you, and if you have, what was the longest vacation you were able to take to disconnect 100%?
Oh man, my longest and best vacation I've ever taken was my honeymoon. And we went to St. Lucia for, I think it was 7 or 8. I can't remember what it was, but many years ago, before you could be connected with internet and things like that. And so it was 7 days of beach and fun and no emails, no cell phones or anything. And it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to have you back. For all those that are watching, please take a minute to share it, like it, comment, spread the positivity, and let's help the world grow and thrive. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Ali. Appreciate it.